Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar, A Beginner's Guide to CRO. My name is Sarah and I'm the Marketing Manager here at Sagittarius, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. Today's presenter is Ruth Irvine, Account Manager here at Sagittarius. Our webinar will last 1 hour and will generally consist of around 45 minutes of webinar and 15 minutes of questions. I will be taking questions at the end of the 45 minutes, but please can I ask you to type your questions into the questions box within the webinar portal, and we will collate these and answer them all at the end. We will also share today's slides from via email to all of the delegates. Now I'll hand you over to Ruth. Ruth, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So as Sarah mentioned, I'm an account manager for the web development side of the business here at Sagittarius, and I work closely with clients and the digital marketing team to establish and implement their conversion rate optimization strategy, whether this is short-term analysis or an ongoing conversion rate optimization retainer. Now, today I'm hoping to give you an introduction to conversion rate optimization that will allow you to explore what it is and how you can implement it on your site. I'm also going to identify how you can achieve it successfully via your platform and establish what good conversion rates actually look like. So to embark on this journey, we will be looking at the following. So what even is conversion rate optimization? The basics, so the bare necessities when it comes to CRO. You need to make sure you understand the value of your investment, and which helps you make data-driven decisions. And taking stock, we need to create a baseline so that you've got something to actually measure your results against. I'm also going to go through my top tips or examples of CRO which have been implemented on other sites and have seen good success rates, and how we can optimize this through the path to purchase. And then we will summarize all of this by looking at how we can measure the success and learn from your results. So this webinar today is really an overview of conversion rate optimization, and we have tried to cover the basics, but then also kind of go into a little bit of detail here and there, so to work out who you are and what your challenges are. So are you somebody who's just launched a website and are looking at how you can improve conversions? You want to maximize your existing platform. You've heard of CRO but not sure what it is, or you just want to do more. So hopefully if you're any of those types of people, today will be of benefit to you. So what is conversion rate optimization? So it's often referred to as CRO, and it's simply a method of using analytics and feedback to improve the performance of your website. You can do this by optimizing your site and increasing the likelihood that visitors will complete a specific action. Ultimately, you're going to be looking to improve the user experience of your site, driving them to complete that golden goal. Now, eConsultancy have reported that according to 59% of company respondents, CRO is crucial to their overall digital marketing strategy. And it's something that here at Sagittarius we really strongly believe in, that it should be something that you are starting to consider investing time and effort into. So the basics of conversion rate optimization. At its most basic level, CRO is simply finding why visitors aren't converting and trying to fix it. Rather than a series of guesses and hunches, CRO is a process of diagnosis, hypotheses, and testing. Now, what do we mean by that? So if you look at a store on a high street, you're keen to increase your sales, so you paint the front door a different colour, for example. Is that going to improve things? Of course not. You're not addressing the real reasons why customers aren't actually buying your stuff. And the same applies to websites. If you just change the colour of your buttons with no effect, if people find your website lacking credibility, targeting the root cause with security logos and social proof will have much more of a bigger impact than just changing the colour. So it's a much better solution. And this is why I think you should become obsessed with CRO. I mean, platform redesigns are not cheap and are not something that you can do every year to keep up with the latest digital trends. Therefore, it's imperative that you keep developing the platform to see what is working and what is not, so you have the opportunity to make enhancements and improve the conversion on your site. And here's just a few examples of, why you should be obsessed with it. You're likely, or most likely, paying for traffic, and you need to ensure that you're getting a return on investment. There's always room for improvement, and traffic is expensive. Higher conversion rate means better return on investment. It's much more cost effective than finding more visitors. Paid traffic is only getting more expensive and more competitive. Defends against limited patience of your visitors, and you're making the most of the users that you already have, and it's free to do this. Now, this is a question we get asked all the time. What does good actually look like? Now, benchmarking data is available online, and we're going to go through a few examples that I can pull out for e-commerce sites. But the best benchmarks are actually based on your own data. So what is a standard conversion for you? What worked well and what didn't? Remember, what you class as a conversion may not actually be the same as other brands, and so you need to set yourself as a target. Now, we see this quite a lot actually with proposals that come in. People want to aspire to be like a certain brand because their website is amazing. But actually, if we built the website to look exactly like that brand, they might not get the same amount of conversions because the business model is completely different. So it's really about focusing on what is good for you and what goals you want to achieve. Now, did you know that companies that take on a structured approach towards conversion rate optimization are twice as likely to see large increase in sales? So it actually baffles me that 61% of companies do less than 5 tests per month. And this is something that actually the more tests you do, the more improvements you're going to see. So if we look at e-commerce conversion benchmark data, and this is pulled out from 2014 because it's actually quite difficult to get your hands on this type of information. But you can actually see that generalized, there's some niche product groups that have higher conversion rates, so electronics and computer software, for example. The other thing that I think it's really important to look at, and especially in this day and age, is orders by device, and that really has to be taken into consideration. And actually last year saw the share of mobile orders, so that's including mobile and tablet, at all e-commerce has increased from 33% from 28 in 2015. Now, just taking all of this into consideration, I just thought I'd pull out some examples of what converting websites are doing well. Now, according to Telegraph research, it showed that the age of smartphones has left humans with an even shorter attention span. And researchers surveyed, I think it was about 2,000 people in Canada, and the results showed the average human attention span has fallen from 12 seconds in 2000, or around the time that the mobile revolution began, to 8 seconds. Meanwhile, goldfish are believed to have an attention span of 9 seconds, so actually less than a goldfish. And sites that actually perform well always credit the fact you have 0 to 8 seconds to make a compelling headline and a landing page, and after 8 seconds the majority of visitors leave. So you need to make sure that you have grabbed your the attention of your users within that 8 seconds. Something else that you should consider is making sure that you've got multiple landing pages. So the more pages you have, the more leads you are likely to get. And product videos can increase purchases of the product by 144%. So actually investing in media and videos and demonstrations of your product can really have a huge effect. And interestingly, a 1 second delay can result in 7% reduction in conversions. An Aberdeen Group study showed that 1 second delay in page load time can have drastic effects. And just to put this in perspective, it equals to 11% fewer page views and a 16% decrease in customer satisfaction and a 7% loss in conversions. So actually looking at the infrastructure of your site and making sure your pages do load very quickly, and especially quickly on mobile when you're on 3G or 4G, is really important. So that's kind of where we want to aspire to be. But how do we actually get there? I'm going to go through a 7-step guide of the points that you should consider to ultimately get to this end goal of implementing conversion or trying to improve conversion rate on your site. So the first step is laying the groundwork and identifying your business objectives. So we've already covered the importance of identifying what conversion means to you, but I'm going to reinstate it because it's really important. Excuse me. Before beginning any optimization strategy, you have to know what you're measuring and attempting to optimize. It's important really important actually to understand what drives these conversions. And the first thing that we'll look at is the goals that help us to achieve this. So we'll look at defining goals. So what is important to you in your business and what actions are likely to lead to a conversion. We'll then define strategies, agree tactics and implementation, and then define your key or your KPIs, short-term and long-term. And then we'll look at deploying these through the appropriate channels. Now, the goals or your digital goals are always established from your business objectives. So firstly, we'll look at the overall business objectives. Then we'll map this into the primary corporate objectives which feed your marketing goals. So for example, a business objective might be digital transformation. That might feed your increase in community reach, where your marcoms goals will be increased self-service. Now, these things will then look at we will then look at these and see how we can implement strategies to deliver on these goals through digital methods. So this is ultimately our baseline and what you need to establish before you even start looking at the data. Then we need to look at the data to impact these decisions. So before you can improve, you need a baseline to measure against. Now, there are three categories that we'll look at. So the first is user analytics, and this is the most basic and essential tool that you have access to. I'm sure all of you have got Google Analytics on your site. Some of you have probably started playing around with Google Tag Manager. But essentially, you need analytics software that track and report on what's happening on your site day in and day out. So there's other programs that you can use like Kissmetrics and Mixpixel or something similar that allows you to get all of the basic information like unique visitors and bounce rates. But also, if you become a bit more confident in using Google Analytics, you can try using the advanced analytic tools like audience segmentation and conversion tracking. Now, key metrics that I think that you should look out for when looking at conversion rate optimization is trying to reduce bounce and exit pages. So an exit rate is specific to each page. It's the percentage of people who leave after viewing that page. And the difference between that and a bounce rate is your bounce rate is the number of visitors who leave your website after viewing a single page. Now, each page has its own bounce rate, and this can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming to analyse. So initially, you probably only want to address looking at maybe these 3 pages. So landing pages, basically where you're sending paid traffic to through ads, because you're going to be paying a lot of money for this traffic. Pages where you're attempting to make conversions happen, and high traffic pages, so pages that most of your visitors are going to see. Now, when you're looking at your bounce rate, I wouldn't look at it from a site level. I would focus on these specific pages, because you'll also have pages within your site that will have a high bounce rate, like blog posts. So you need to address the objective of your page before worrying about the bounce rate. So we've looked at analytics. The next thing that we need to address is user testing when you're looking at conversion rate optimization. Now, sometimes it's really difficult to articulate the problem that your users are having, whereas nowadays there's plenty of tools out there to help us look into this. So, for example, there's tools that allow you to directly observe how users are interacting with your site. You can use their feedback to get a better understanding of how your site's functioning, as well as testing potential changes and document how they're playing out in real life and real time. You can also look at what's grabbing your users' attention, where they're looking, clicking and lingering. You can use heat mapping and click density to look into this. But much like a user survey, these tools help you to make a sense of how your users are engaging with your site, so you can form a hypothesis about how to improve experience. You've also got a tool called Crazy Egg, which is your user's eye tracking technology that allows you to visualize where users are scrolling on your site through the creation of heat maps, scroll maps, and overlay tools. Now, these all require a subscription, but we would recommend that you put them on your site for, starting at a month to start to gather the analytics. But actually, it's really useful to have these on your site all the time that you're performing tests. to improve the conversion, because you can then track the improvements that you're making. Now, a tip: if you rely on your phone conversions, then you also need to really be looking at tracking phone calls, just so that you can measure the correlation between the site and the phone ringing. We have experience using Response Tap and Infinity, and I know the digital marketing team here have lots of advice about this type of integration if you would like to know further information. And then finally, the last set of tools that we would look at is user surveys, so things like SurveyMonkey or Qualaroo. Analytics can only communicate so much about your users' needs. It's good to have, or good to actually get that feedback in real life, to be able to gain the insights directly from the users, to hear their concerns in their own words. And there's, as we all know, there's no such thing as too much user feedback. So this is where user surveys come in and are really useful. So once you've gathered all this information and you're starting to track what your baseline is, we can then start to look at changes to improve that baseline. Now, just an interesting stat that I think you should all consider is, although these tools, some of them cost money, the average return on investment of CRO tools is 223%, according to a survey that was carried out by VentureBeat. Now, that's quite interesting, because obviously if you utilise the information and you make improvements on your site, then it's going to outweigh the cost of implementing these tools. And to be honest, they can range from £50 up to $250, depending on the subscription that you want to make. So we've got all of the analytics in place. We then need to identify the barriers to conversion. So you've got to build up a profile of people's objectives and opinions. You can set up funnels and analyse the points where your users enter until the point that they exit, to try and identify the missing links or barriers to conversion. And once these barriers have been identified, that's where we can then start to wireframe solutions. So when talking about user experience, I'm not talking about a site or how a site looks, but actually how your users engage and interact with your site. We want to review, what we want to review today is by no means a comprehensive list, and what improves conversions on one site might actually harm another, as we spoke about earlier. So, and this is actually because each site has its own unique business objectives, strengths, and challenges. So when we pair your UX with funnel optimization, we're actually looking at how we can create less friction on the site by ensuring that users stay on track and ensure that they move through the funnel seamlessly, which is sometimes a bit of a challenge. But as soon as you've got a plan, you list and prioritize the main conversion killers, and then we can start to work on solutions and how to fix it and increase conversion. But whilst we're doing this, the point of CRO is actually to test scientifically. And the most important thing to take away from testing is to learn what works and what doesn't. You're going to have things that don't work, even though you've got the assumption that it will. But it's the point that you have to learn from it and then improve. So with testing, there's actually a nice quote from somebody called Grace Hopper. One accurate measurement is worth more than 1,000 expert opinions. And that's totally true. If you've got the data, you can see what's working and what's not. And the way that we test is looking at A/B testing and multivariate testing when we start to put in wireframe solutions. So A/B, there is a difference between A/B and multivariate testings, and you may know, but A/B tests run with maybe two pages or two different components, whereas multivariate tests run with multiple combinations of those components. Now, there's platforms like Sitecore that has this integrated, but you can actually also, with some of the subscriptions with the analytics tools that we've spoken about, you can actually run and implement tests, which is sometimes quite useful for when you're trying to get a project signed off or over the line. You can make simple changes to button colours or page layout within these tools. You can see the improvement, and then you can look at actually developing that on your platform. So you don't need to necessarily develop it on the platform to look at the results. Now, I know with cycle, you can actually look at gamification when you're running your A/B or multivariate tests. So you must decide which items you want to compare, and then you can basically decide whether you think it's going to improve or affect the conversion, and you start to have a leaderboard. So you can start to look at involving your team and making these decisions as well. And what we've learned is don't test too many things at once. Instead, you really need to create a clear, structured hypothesis. It's not the testing tool that increases your conversions, it's the ideas that you pump into it. And really, if you want to test and look at the improvements that you're making, you really want to keep it simple. So have one test running or a couple of tests running at a time, but maybe looking at different areas of the site so that you can really track the improvement. And then it's looking at reviewing. So you review your test, analyse the analytics, click density, inform analytics, and compare it to the original page and check the difference. And then once you've got this, well, actually, I'm just going to caveat, failure on all of these tests doesn't mean this test went wrong. It means that the original is doing something really, really well. So you need to learn from this and iterate. And you are going to have tests that don't work, but actually we can improve on those and learn from them. So that's just something to ensure that you always manage expectations in-house when you are running these tests. And that's kind of leads us nicely into the rinse and repeat. So you have to repeat the process and keep building up the successful tests. You need to find winning variations and build upon the success of the previous test. So it's monitoring, reporting, evaluate, adjusting and running again. And this is just a continual cycle. And all of this, unfortunately, requires a lot of dedication from the team, or potentially look at taking out to agency. To actually run a CRO program well, you need to be looking at the data, analysing and implementing. Now this slide is from actually Cycle, and they look at if you want to become an engaging brand or a lifetime customers brand, then really you need to be ensuring that you have digital analysts, acquisition marketeers, channel experts to help drive the business forward. So if you do want to have a look at this program, then you just need to make sure that you've got the resource to also support it. Now that's all the kind of basics as to how to implement a CRO program on your site. But I'm actually now going to look at my top tips and case studies through our experience with working on CRO. My top tip, and it has to be the winning one for me, is personalisation. It is absolutely everywhere, and I think we're becoming a little bit more accustomed to it being everywhere now. I mean, just even if you look at Google, I am searching for, in this instance, if my video plays, restaurants in London. Now, Google is actually returning results based on places I've been or where I've searched before. So it's tailoring and personalising my search results page. Then we've got Apple Music. Now, this is interesting, and don't judge me for my Apple Music taste, but this will return results for me based on music that I've listened to before, maybe time or day of the week, or potentially given me playlists for the mood. So, for example, if it's Sunday, then potentially it's a little bit more chilled. And then finally, I'm sure you've all heard the expression that we've never actually seen the real Amazon because there's so many A/B tests going on. If you look on the left-hand side, it's an anonymous user where the information is very vanilla, it's not particularly targeted, although there is a key call to action to sign in. Once I have signed in, it's got all of my browsing history, potentially what I've purchased before, and then it can start to promote other things to me. So here it's asking me to join Prime. And it's also showing me my name. Now, personalisation lets you keep up with evolving customer demands. It allows you to deliver targeted content in real time. And this allows you to make contextual decisions and based on results that you can actually trust. And you can personalise based on user characteristics and behaviour, such as location, goals that have been triggered on your site, or even previous visits. Now, we know that 88% of companies personalise through email. Now, this is usually specific to their name, usually, rather than the type of profile that they are. but only 45% of companies personalise on their site. Now, there are sites like Sitecore that make it a lot easier, but then there are other tools in which you can implement on the site to offer personalisation, and they are starting to storm the market as well. And why you should personalise, to be honest, this figure highlights why. There's 19%, and Sitecore actually say that they often see it often more than 19% if a personalisation strategy is implemented correctly. And it's not really that difficult to do. But when we talk about personalisation, we're not talking about saying, hello, Ruth, for example, on a homepage. We're talking about delivering relevant content. So I've just got a little example to show you here. So this is a mobile site for clothes. There's 3 components on the homepage. The lead banner is trying to entice me to log in and register, and then we've got shop women and shop men. Now this example is of the first visit, so the site has no information about me at this point in time. Once I've returned, and in my first example I've clicked shop women, the top component then starts to promote dresses to me. It then removes the option to shop men, and it says shop latest trends. Say potentially I've come back and it's now trying to get me to sign up with social, again, what's trending, and shop by category. And then you can start to pair information like your location with weather. So it's promoting shop outerwear because potentially it's going to rain this week. And then finally, if I've got something in my basket, I can then promote or start promoting discount vouchers to really push me through that funnel. Now, these are all really small changes that can be made to the site, but it's all subtly pushing me through the funnel. And that's why I think if personalisation is implemented correctly and strategically, then you can see great improvements of conversion on your site. Now, my next tip, and something that you should really consider, is the checkout process. Now, this is where we see the most amount of drop-offs. And to be honest, when you're looking at implementing a CRO program, if you've got an e-commerce site, this is where you should potentially start looking. I've pulled out this interesting diagram or report, from Business Insider that looks at the top reasons for abandonment of shopping carts. Now, the top one is shipping costs made the total purchase more than expected. Now, I can certainly say that I've pulled out from a basket before because of that reason. Or potentially another one that caused 50% of drop-offs was my order value wasn't large enough to qualify for the free shipping. And 25%, my preferred payment method or option was not offered. So these are just some examples of the information that you might even get from the analytic reports that you start to put on the site and gather the insight from. But these are the things that you should be considering when looking at your checkout process. And how you can improve checkout. One thing you could do is experiment with a single page checkout process. There is a bit of debate around what's better for conversion rate optimization, whether it's multi-page or single, but you can certainly play with this. The biggest one is skipping the mandatory sign up. Offer guest checkout. Your customers today are more and more wary, definitely, of sharing their private information with your site. They might like your products enough to buy them, but few of them are actually going to create an account and actually start their relationship with you. So if you offer a guest checkout, they're much more likely to convert. You can look at free shipping, free returns, and secure payment gateways. That definitely entices consumers to check out. And this isn't specific to the checkout process, but you should look at making your forms quick and easy to fill in. Ask only for information that is absolutely necessary. And you can also take advantage of Google autofill to try and populate forms more easily for your user, especially on mobile. And you can also look at optimizing the shopping cart experience. ASOS have a great case study actually, where when you're in the checkout process, they remove all other navigation from the site, so you're not distracted by going back to shop or exiting the checkout process. And this is seeing huge conversions on their site. Another thing that you could look at is a checkout configurator. So you can ask specific questions to help deliver relevant and targeted products to your basket. So if I just skip to the end, because this video is a little bit long, you can see that it then delivers relevant products. And you often see this with car manufacturers or Inspire Me websites. Now, my next tip is looking at social logins and again forms. Social logins can improve conversion rate, not only to encourage users to sign up initially, but the ongoing implication means you can share targeted, relevant content. So if we just take a look at some examples, again with ASOS, when I go to sign up initially, it has a call to action to sign up with Facebook, Google and Twitter, or then I can use my email address. Whereas when I return, it's using the already registered and I can then sign up with the email address. So the call to action changes slightly. Now, the reason why we would recommend implementing social sign up on your site really is for a few reasons that you should consider. Across the world, there are now 2.5 billion people worldwide who have a social media profile. People are getting password fatigue where they have lots of different passwords they can never remember, so they're resetting their password constantly, so there's a lot of data that you have to store. And like I said, one set of details is much easier to remember. Now that's all for the user, but for you, the value is that people are much more likely to update their personal information on their social media profile than going to your website and updating their marital status or potentially their relationship status, and that's even if you capture that information. So you can start to have relevant content about that user without actually going to a lot of effort. Reviews, I think the stats speak for themselves here. 63% of customers are much more likely to make a purchase from a site which has user reviews. So if we look at Trafalgar that's on screen, they've decided to partner with FIFO with a full API integration. So they have the logo displayed next to key CTAs. They also have an embedded feed of their reviews on the page. Rather than letting people go to a review site externally like TripAdvisor, they keep everything on site, so they're not getting those exit rates where people go off to other sites. So it's great. It's really powerful to have it on site. And there's a stat actually that says 92% of consumers now read online reviews versus 88% in 2014. So I think we're becoming a much more review-driven consumer. I mean, this is another example of Adidas where they've got the reviews being pulled through onto a specific product page. So there's value definitely of having it on site, but equally you should also look at the value of the integration where you can have organic stars, which then pull through onto your Google shopping feed. You've got seller ratings, and actually we've got, if you optimize your PPC ads by adding seller ratings, so the stars, alongside paid listings, it can boost your click-through rate to an impressive 17%. You can then also pull this through onto product listing ads, social media and content marketing. So there is definitely value added there. And there's so the full API integration can be a bit of a complex integration, but not impossible. And FIFO do make it really easy. There's also other providers like Trustpilot that should be considered. But it's definitely value added rather than having your own internal review system. I also think search is really important. Now, if we look at the search listing page here, we know that if you have filters down the side of your landing pages, it increases revenue by 76.1% in one study. Now, this is really, really powerful and not difficult to do on your search listing pages. But something that I'm sure you've probably all seen with the rise of Apple and Siri, and I think Amazon have their own voice activated service now as well, is that you can clearly allow users to search. Now, we've all seen it with Apple, but actually we've now started to see sites start to use this functionality as well. So this person is searching for Adidas Originals. Now, this is much more popular on mobile sites when you're out and about, potentially hands-free, so you can just search for things, but it's certainly something, I think, something to consider for the future. to improve conversions on your site. User-generated content is super powerful. By having real-life images and social engagement can really improve your conversion rate optimization twofold. It's human nature to see reality rather than what the brand wants you to see. So plugins like Stackler allow you to have a live feed of social data on your site to help inspire, really. There's another example from Trafalgar here. It shows you how they drive traffic to this feed with their hashtag Simply Trafalgar. And this is one way to control the feed across your site. Other ways to drive this content link back to having inspiring content in the first place. So I've seen blog posts by companies that promote top places to take the perfect Instagram picture when in Rome, and then encouraging the user to use the company's or tours as hashtag. This way you help to drive nice imagery and pictures into the feed, and ultimately it creates a great looking website. Now, tips 6 is looking at touch first. Now, this might be a little bit controversial, but I think that we should be thinking potentially about adaptive rather than responsive. And what we seem to have forgotten is that our approach to mobile and touch is slightly different. We pick up interactions like text editing and try to retrofit mobile into it. We don't ever question the fundamentals to ensure the new experience fits well. So a touch of mobile improves conversions and sales, and it should be, all sites should now be optimized at least for mobile. We often hear that people say that people browse but don't buy on mobile, but you're still helping the consumer journey and push them through that funnel. Ultimately, the end game is if you can get them to log in on mobile and log in on desktop, then you're tracking the user story between both platforms. And unfortunately, at the moment, that's the only way to do it. And the reason you should do this, I mean, the stats speak for themselves. This is a snapshot from some of our customers. And you can see that in the last 10 years, touch has massively improved. So this includes mobile and tablet. And we're seeing significant growth on smartphones, particularly with iPads petering out. So you should start to consider this. And even just changing functionality slightly on the site really starts to improve conversions. And then finally, I think that if you've got an e-commerce site, we really need to be looking at one-click payment integration or payment and shipping. And this is where most shopping carts are actually abandoned. And it's usually because of failure to include shipping, handling and tax and into the final order, which doesn't tally up properly. And this is a crucial moment for buyers where they either check out and you get an exit rate or whether they actually convert. We've now got things like Apple Pay, PayPal, Google Checkout, because not everybody wants to bother when dragging out their wallet or purse to find their credit card. So I know certainly for me, and we see it within the business, these types of integrations massively improve conversion rate. There's even technology where you can shorten the process. So, for example, with PayPal, they have got the one-click payment gateway, but also allows you to now provide a card scanning service, which uses the smartphone on your camera to shorten the process of even entering these details. So with the technology that's developing, you can really harness this to start to improve the conversions on your site. And these are all really my top tips, but you should really start to think where you are currently and where do you want to be. Benchmark your data, see what information you have got, start to analyse that and start to run simple tests to start to improve conversion on your site. I hope that has been of use to you today.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm just going to check if we have any questions. Yeah, we do have one here. If I could just ask you, how long does it take to see results in CRO?
Okay, so to see results in CRO, firstly, you need to be monitoring all of your data. So when we start to look at these tools that you should implement on your site, you should really start to gather the data for, say, minimum of 1 month. And then once you start to roll out the tests, again, you need to be waiting 1 to 2 months for the results to come in, but keep the tests simple and maybe only do 1 to 2 tests at a time.
Okay. And is there a minimum investment that you have to make in CRO as a brand?
Well, initially, I think it's really useful to invest and kind of create your benchmarks. So definitely there is time needed to be invested within looking at the data, analysing where there is dropouts and making the most of that. I mean, you can also start to look into even more depth by doing a competitor analysis and starting to put that together as a package. So really it's about time, but it take you back to that slide where we looked at the roles needed to do such a task. You do need to be starting to think about having a data analyst within your team. If it's something that you were to do within the agency, it really depends on the level of information that you want to start looking at and for how long you want to run it. But really, CRO programs start at about £5,000 investment.
Okay. We've got a question here from Erin. How is the best way to balance the fact that videos are so important with the need to not have a delay in the loading time?
So there's lots of ways that you can look at integrating your videos on your site to make sure that there's no impact. So you can look at hosting them, even if you just do it on YouTube or Vimeo and have a feed in. There's also tools that we can use. So for example, with some of our brands, we use Akamai, which helps with the caching of videos and imagery to help with load time and delivering these in a specific way. So if you have got a requirement and you want to use video, there's certainly ways in which we can look at reducing the impact that has on page speed. But one of the biggest pitfalls that we have with clients is they upload videos in it. The files are huge. And the other thing is that the videos are too long. Like I said, you've got about 8 seconds to grab somebody's attention. You shouldn't be having a minute-long video. To be honest, the maximum length is like maximum 15, 20 seconds.
Would you recommend that it's better to embed a video from YouTube into your site rather than hosting the video on your site itself? Is that going to improve page speed, I would assume?
Yes. So we've got examples of both. And if you handle the file size correctly and host it yourself, then you shouldn't have too many problems. But actually, if you do host it with YouTube or Vimeo, it does. It reduces the load time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, I don't have any more questions for Ruth, so we'll wrap up today's webinar. So I want to thank everybody for attending. The webinar slides and the recording will be shared with all of the delegates ASAP. So thank you for attending, and we'll close today's webinar. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.